This episode brings us back to a familiar place, Vancouver Island, one of the densest black bear regions. Here, the humidity remains at 100% throughout the year. Now in pairs, participants face the wilderness challenge. On the first day, 7 teams are left. Dave, from the first team, has just landed and starts to find his way. His wife, Brooke, accompanies him. Their tasks are well defined. Brooke builds the shelter on site while Dave searches for resources. Contestants can only use compasses to determine direction. The American participants land about 16 kilometers apart. Dave and his wife, Brooke, married for 18 years with 2 children, believe they have a significant advantage in this competition. This stems from their 8 years of marital understanding and a life far from modern civilization. For them, competing with someone who holds different ideals would be an unbearable challenge. Only with the right partner can they cooperate closely and give their all. From Brooke's perspective, she landed on a wide coast, often abundant with resources. Not far from her landing spot, she discovered a stream with fresh water and some chanterelles nearby, securing food and water upon arrival. After collecting some pine branches for kindling in the woods, she decided to explore the coast for resources. However, upon reaching the coast, Brooke encountered a wolf. This pack animal was likely the scout of its group. Both were initially confused, but the wolf, accustomed to dominating Vancouver Island, was not particularly afraid of humans. It continued to approach Brooke until she made a noise, and it prudently backed away. On Vancouver Island's wilderness, the animals teach you that you are no longer at the top of the food chain. Here, not only wolves, but also about 7,000 black bears and nearly 1,000 cougars could threaten your life. As a female contestant, Brooke didn't dare to be too conspicuous while waiting for her husband. She returned to the woods to start building the shelter, knowing she was alone and couldn't rush the job. A secure campsite was her top priority. It must be said, Brooke's hands-on skills are impressive. By the afternoon, she had completed a sturdy shelter. Brad landed in a forest, a challenging location. The dense jungle would significantly slow him down, taking a lot of time to navigate and being home to many wild animals. Brad's brother joined him in the competition. They have an exceptional bond and often set up camps outdoors together, honing their skills. Brad, at 23, is in his prime, strong physically. If they can manage the psychological pressure, they could be strong contenders. His brother landed on a beach, confident in his ability to build a sturdy shelter and wait for Brad. However, after exploring for 3 hours, he couldn't find a suitable spot. The lack of flat ground in the primitive forest was frightening, and he got lost. In his panic, he fell and twisted his ankle between 2 tree roots. Desperate and disoriented, he eventually reached the beach and hastily called for help. Scared, he chose to quit the competition after just 3 hours. In this season's pairs format, one participant's withdrawal forces their partner to leave as well. Brad, who had just erected a temporary shelter due to rain, was startled by the sound of a helicopter. The production team found him using his satellite location. Learning of his brother's exit due to injury, he was silent at first, but relieved that it was not a more serious issue. The brothers were the youngest team and had to leave the competition early. The third team member, Alex, embarked on a long trek after landing to find his son. His landing spot was a swampy area, heavy with moisture and danger. He soon found fresh bear droppings, prompting him to leave the area quickly. Competing with his 19-year-old son, Alex believed his son's clear thinking was crucial for survival. As a retired veteran, Alex felt confident in taking care of their survival, while his son would contribute many useful ideas for living in the wild. The camera switches to his son, Logan, who is 19 years old. He landed in a dense jungle, struggling to build a shelter due to the steep slopes and unsuitable terrain. As it began to rain, he had no choice but to set up a tarp to protect his clothes and equipment. The fourth team member, Jesse, landed and discovered a large amount of turkey tail mushrooms, known for their medicinal properties that can boost immunity. Planning to collect them for brewing tea later, Jesse, who served 10 years in the military and has a strong sense of direction, took on the role of finding his partner, his brother. To reunite with his brother sooner, Jesse crossed through bushes to a path created by black bears, which made him nervous as black bears are more likely to attack when startled or feeling their territory is invaded. On the second day, 6 teams remained. Ted, from the 5th team, reached a beach at low tide on his second day and pried up a hat clam, a common type of shellfish found at low tide that provides some calories. His brother Jim was responsible for finding him. As the younger brother, Ted needed to build a sturdy shelter. Both brothers work at a map publishing company and are professional adventurers, often surveying uninhabited areas. This has honed their strong survival skills, resilience, and endurance. For them, this competition is more like a long business trip or an adventure game, showcasing their survival skills. Ted, who is 1.9 meters tall, requires more food than average, and his brother Jim, at 2 meters tall, needs even more. Both are robust and need a lot of food just to maintain bodily functions. Ted's first step is to find as much food as possible during this low tide and set up the fishing nets he brought. The camera then shifts to Jim, whose 2-meter stature makes navigating the jungle challenging. Just then, as the rain started, and Alex, a member of the third team, had to stop due to the swampy landing area, he worried about his son Logan. He was just thinking of him when he heard a helicopter overhead. The show's crew informed him that there had been an incident with Logan and he needed to go to him. Alex hoped it wasn't a wild animal attack. Fortunately, upon landing, he saw Logan safe and sound, bringing a smile to Alex's face. Despite Logan explaining how he had to quit the competition, Alex seemed not to hear it. It was simply too much for Logan to handle the unknown fears of the wilderness. Alex kept his eyes on his son, relieved that he was unharmed. He reassured him that giving up didn't mean losing, especially before one's mind is fully mature. Even though their withdrawal forced Alex out of the race too, he was still proud of his son for having the courage to step into the competition. After all, at 19, Logan will grow into a strong man. Regrettably, the father-son duo had to leave the competition on the third day, leaving 5 teams remaining. Brooke from the first team focused on keeping a fire going today. Given that it rains for over half the year on Vancouver Island, with constant humidity, fire is essential for survival, for cooking, drying clothes, and more. Brooke dug a pit at the campsite's opening, lined it with mud, sand, and stones, and surrounded it with sticks covered with branches to shield from rain. It's worth noting that the main entrance of the shelter is on the left, not at this opening. Returning to the shelter, it took less than 10 minutes for the fire to start, showing the benefits of dry kindling collected over the previous days. Buddy, from Team 6, navigated through dense bushes, stepping over wild grass and vines, where soil wasn't even visible. Growing up in the countryside with his brother, the two had plenty of outdoor experience, often taking their family camping and hunting. Buddy emerged from the bushes, frustrated to find his compass pointing towards a nearby mountain. Could his brother Chris still be on the other side? To reach him, Buddy would have to cross a dense mountain forest, a nearly lethal task. To help Buddy spot him, Chris had hung several torn plastic bottles on trees, hoping their bright colors would catch his brother's eye, unaware of the mountain between them. Team member Shannon from the 4th team chewed on seaweed for breakfast by the coast this morning. He was waiting for his brother Jesse to arrive. Both brothers have their own jobs. Shannon is a fisherman and hunter, while Jesse served in the military for 10 years. They are both adventurers. This morning, Shannon was on the beach looking for wood to build a shelter and found a leaky box. Meanwhile, Jesse had been following a black bear's hunting trail for the past few days and finally reached the coast today, where he could rest. Before resting, Jesse climbed to a high point and repeatedly shouted his brother's name. After getting no response, he gave up. But nearby, Shannon heard the distant shouts. Although unclear and indistinguishable whether it was a human voice, he responded, only to have his echo drowned out by the waves. Today, Shannon planned to turn the found wood into a crab trap, but walking back and forth on the slippery beach was risky. Shannon fell. Team 5 member Ted found no catch in his fishing net this morning. He decided to go fishing and waited for the second high tide, but caught nothing all afternoon. When the tide went out, he planned to return home, but was stunned to find his net full of fish. 5 fish, which greatly boosted his confidence. His brother Jim, however, was not as fortunate. In search of his brother following the compass direction, he had been crawling for 4 days and was very hungry. He resorted to eating banana slugs, the world's second-largest slug species, which he boiled at high temperatures. The taste was unpleasant. Jim described it as chewing actual mucus, just a hardened version. By the 5th day, 5 teams remained. Shannon from the 4th team fell on the coast. The wet shore was covered with dead wood and rocks, and he injured himself, feeling intense pain in his lower back and right leg, possibly indicating a compression fracture. Shannon tried to stand but lost feeling in his foot. He didn't want to give up, but his body trembled uncontrollably. A compression fracture occurs when force is applied downward suddenly, causing the bone to misalign before settling. Such injuries are typically caused by falls and can lead to spinal deformities if not treated promptly. After several attempts to move his foot failed, Shannon reluctantly called for help. The rescue team brought a stretcher and confirmed the need for immediate treatment for his spinal injury. Though reluctant, his injury meant Jesse would be forced to withdraw, which deeply saddened him. At that moment, he felt terrible. Over at Jesse's location on the beach, he was preparing to rest but could not start a fire due to the excessive moisture. In the blink of an eye, he spotted the helicopter. His first thought was hoping Shannon was safe. When the production team informed him that his brother had hurt his lower back and was sent to the hospital, he panicked. He didn't care about the competition. He just wanted his brother to be safe. The team also told him that they were only 800 meters apart. Unfortunately, one was injured. Jesse felt guilty, thinking if only he had moved faster these past few days, he might have reached his brother sooner and prevented the injury. The brothers from Team 4 ended their journey in disappointment on the 5th afternoon, leaving 4 teams remaining. Brooke from Team 1, now with a fire, planned to gather enough dry wood today. She had a sturdy shelter and a warm fire, only missing her husband Dave, to air out the sleeping bag and soak up some vitamin D from the sun. But shortly after lying down, Brooke spotted a wolf for the second time. She hurriedly dressed, realizing she had been too relaxed and hoping for Dave's early arrival. Meanwhile, Dave found an open area on his 5th day of searching for his wife. Just as he was settling down, the sound of a breaking branch startled him. Fortunately, it was a false alarm. Team 7's Peter finally made an appearance. 3 teams had been eliminated before his entry, showcasing the dangers of the wild. 2 teams were out due to injuries, and 1 because of the psychological impact on younger participants. But Peter, at 61, was still competing, showing his exceptional physical condition. He waited for his son, Sam, who was an expert in botany. As a seasoned fisherman, fishing was Peter's forte. By the water, he casually made a fishing rod, quickly catching a fish as if the waterside was his dining table. Turning to his son, Sam, he confidently said his father was stronger than anyone and was surely comfortable now. All he needed was for his physically adept son to hurry to his side to start showcasing their skills together. However, as Sam traveled through the jungle, facing his first challenge, his compass pointed across a large lake that seemed shoreless. He didn't want to risk hypothermia by entering the water, potentially costing him his life. Ultimately, he chose to head upstream where the water normally narrows, unlike downstream where it widens. After eating grilled fish with his father, Peter, he wandered outside the shelter and discovered an area of grass flattened by a black bear and fresh bear feces. Every few steps, he found more droppings indicating frequent bear visits. Broody, from Team 6, recently spotted salmon swimming in shallow waters. He caught one, planning his first full meal in 5 days. However, survival on Vancouver Island proved tough. From evening to night, he couldn't start a fire as everything was soaked. Overwhelmed by hunger, Broody chose to eat the fish raw, although he usually dislikes sashimi. Eating raw posed risks of diarrhea, nausea, abdominal pain, and even parasites. Broody's brother Chris seemed to sense his needs, deciding today to make a drying rack for storing firewood, as if knowing his brother's desperate need for dry wood. During low tide, Broody crossed the water and finally climbed over the mountain. Believing he was close to his brother, he moved forward, shouting as he went. Soon, he heard a response, which thrilled him. After 5 tough days, eating raw meat was a highlight. Following each other's voices, the brothers eventually reunited on the beach, becoming the first team this season to meet up. This gave them an edge over solo players in the wilderness, reducing psychological stress and increasing their combined strength. On the 8th day, 4 teams remained. Brooke from Team 1 woke up at night to find a large spider in his sleeping bag, fortunately unharmed, unlike last season's Corey, who suffered for a week from a spider bite. After a session with a wooden stick massage, Brooke fell asleep again. In the morning, he decided to improve his shelter by building a raised bed on a slope to avoid most poisonous insects and damp ground. He inserted stakes at the bottom of the slope, used sticks for the middle partition, laid soft branches on top, and covered it with a waterproof cloth, creating a raised, flat bed. After 8 days of trekking, Dave finally reached the seaside directed by his compass, approximately 1 kilometer away from his wife's location. After completing a small bed, Brooke arrived at the coast and found plenty of lines, enough to weave a fishing net, which was a huge gain. While Brooke was gathering fishing lines on the grass, Dave's shouts could be heard from not far away. Excited, Brooke had endured a week and finally saw her husband on the 8th day. A brief hug calmed their uneasy feelings over the past few days, and they became the second team to meet up. Even though Dave knew his wife was amazing, he was still surprised by the perfect shelter she had built alone, and he couldn't help but praise her handy skills. Meanwhile, Jim of Team 5 was fantasizing about his brother catching a deer and waiting for his arrival to feast. While he was lost in his thoughts, he spotted a ptarmigan. Backed against a wall, Jim approached the corner where the bird was, took his shot, but missed slightly, and ended up breaking the production team's action camera, losing more than he gained. His brother Ted wasn't worried about any difficulties Jim might face. Instead, he was explaining what to use as toilet paper in the wild, recommending moss for its excellent texture, even preferring it over toilet paper. After Jim had previously caught 5 fish with a net, now the net was empty. Together, the two tall brothers, weighing a total of 451 pounds, needed to consume 5,200 calories daily to maintain their weight. But Jim was having a harder time with several days of fasting and strenuous daily treks. Today, he chose a shelter site casually, even next to cougar feces, recklessly picking the spot in cougar territory, until he realized at night. Upon spotting the cougar, Jim chased after it without hesitation, shouting for it not to run, as he was considering adding the cougar to his menu. True to his 2-meter height and 210-pound frame, desperately hungry and willing to try anything, Ted started building a small boat as the net had not yielded any fish recently, guessing the fish may have moved to deeper waters. This made one worry, as the two brothers, with no stable way to obtain food and fast consumption rates, might face hunger together when they meet. Team 7 member Sam was baffled when he suddenly realized his axe was missing. He had no idea when or where he lost it. In the wilderness, an axe is a vital tool for chopping wood, hunting, and defending against wild animals. Sam dreaded the thought of meeting his father and telling him about the lost axe. This led him to consider quitting, but he knew his father, a determined man participating in the competition at 61, would not take quitting lightly. Knowing he couldn't disappoint his father, Sam exited the jungle and approached the seaside. His compass pointed to this location near the sea where his father was close by. After calling out, they reunited. Peter hugged his son, proud that Sam, concerned about his father's stamina, managed to navigate the jungle for 8 days to find him. On day 10, with only 4 teams left, Brooke from Team 1 discovered a duck on the beach. She approached it and realized it had an injured wing after stepping on its head to examine it. Excited about the unexpected delicacy of duck in the wild, she waited for Dave to wake up, and the couple enjoyed charcoal-grilled sea duck for breakfast. After eating, they divided tasks. Dave made fishing gear and traps, while Brooke went fishing. Dave took on all the heavy work since meeting up with his wife, who organized their cozy shelter efficiently. Soon, Brooke caught a fish, prompting Dave to join her fishing. Working together, they weren't tired and returned to the shelter with 2 fish, preparing for dinner with ample firewood and each other's company, enjoying the happiness of being together. Breakfast was duck and dinner was grilled fish, a luxury unexpected in the wilderness. Jim from Team 5 and his brother are the only duo yet to reunite. The daily trekking exhausted Jim's physical strength, and by day 10, kudzu had become a staple in his diet. Meanwhile, Ted started building a shelter for 2, thinking it unnecessary to build one earlier since his brother was still on the move. By day 10, counting the days, Ted anticipated Jim's arrival nearby. However, navigating the jungle was exceptionally challenging for Jim, who is over 2 meters tall. Food is unstable. Nitrogen water is unstable. He consumes much more energy than ordinary people. Although the two are not far apart in location, the dense jungle still hinders the older brother's progress. In the afternoon, while making a small boat, Ted heard his brother's call. However, Ted was slightly worried because he knew his brother urgently needed food, and he had no food supplies. But the brothers' reunion would break this deadlock. They planned to work together to create their own paradise. Tonight, to secure more food sources, they would build their own crab trap. In the morning, they displayed the newly built trap, which has an entrance in the middle. Once a crab enters, it is difficult for it to escape through the protruding entrance. A rope on top is used for later retrieval, and an attractant bag is at the bottom of the trap. To approach the bait, crabs must enter the trap. The brothers found some shellfish on the beach to use as bait. They secured the trap before high tide and waited to collect it at low tide. Time quietly passed, and they found the trap empty, greatly demoralizing them. Team 7's Sam kindled a fire this morning. Upon entering the camp, he realized his father had found a good spot. Loving fishing and with his father being an old fisherman, their shelter was not far from the water. This morning, Sam was eager to set traps by the water. He tied a stone to the end of the fishing line to sink it, bound 2 hooks in the middle, and baited the hooks. All he needed to do was throw the stone into the water, hoping for a good catch. In the wilderness, whether there is a stable food source will determine if you stay or go home. Today, his father Peter started fishing and couldn't stop, catching 3 fish, which delighted Sam. If they could catch like this every day, the championship would surely be theirs. After lunch, the father and son decided to cover the back of the shelter with walls to shield against wind and rain. Working together indeed doubled their efficiency. In just an hour, a windbreak wall was completed, looking very refined. Team 6's Chris and Broody, having been the first to find each other, also became a stable food source today, creating more fishing tools. Today, they tried long pole fishing, but the fishing spot they chose was not ideal, and their hooks were snagging on rocks. Continuing this way, they would run out of hooks. Day 13. 4 teams remain. Team 7 Sam and his father Peter are facing a torrential downpour. Their shelter is very safe and does not leak, allowing them to go fishing today. The father and son have daily tasks, with collecting food being their top priority. Despite the storm, Peter catches fish again, maintaining his consistent success. After catching 2 fish, they return to their camp. Team 6. Chris and Broody, 2 brothers, are experiencing extreme storm conditions. Their shelter is leaking, and they must act quickly to prevent their sleeping bags from being ruined, which would render them unusable for a long time. They consider relocating their shelter to a drier area, as their current low-lying location is unsuitable for long-term use. As soon as the rain stops, the brothers eagerly search for a new shelter site. However, finding a dry spot after the storm proves nearly impossible. They could move deeper into the jungle or up the hills near large trees, but both options are far from the sea, complicating food acquisition. Back at camp, the brothers disagree. Chris, the older brother, suggests to Broody that they withdraw from the competition. Indeed, as the one who stayed behind, Chris is the first to propose leaving. Broody had made a considerable effort to find him, and now, after just one storm, Chris wants to quit. Since this season's competition is a team event, one member's withdrawal would force the other to leave as well. Broody does not want to give up halfway, but Chris insists on quitting, and Broody cannot force him to stay and suffer. Despite Broody's attempts to persuade him, Chris remains unmoved. Facing the show's producers, Chris appears righteous, as if giving up costs him nothing. Broody, typically very competitive and not one to flee from challenges, does not want their relationship to sour, even though he strongly wishes to continue. He hopes this competition will not affect their relationship in everyday life. The 6th team, the brothers, exit the competition with unresolved differences. Day 15, 3 teams remain. Team 5. Ted he just vomited. Today, he has been vomiting and has diarrhea. This is due to eating large amounts of seaweed. Seaweed contains high levels of iodine, which can cause abdominal bloating, pain, and nausea. If they don't return to a normal diet soon, his body will struggle to continue in the competition. As the older brother, Jim wants to protect his younger brother. Even though it's raining, he goes to the water's edge to fish. There are no medicines in the wild. To heal Ted, meat is the best remedy. After changing fishing spots several times, he finally catches several fish near some rocks. It's as if heaven senses his urgent need for food. He catches a total of 11 fish. Today is truly a bountiful day. Back at camp, the 2 brothers discuss how many fish to cook today. As if the food wasn't enough, a duck walks straight towards the fire. With a swift pounce, Jim captures it. The brothers are thrilled with their luck. Today is truly a windfall. More than 10 fish and a duck that walked right up to them. Team 1. Brooke. After yesterday's storm, They plan to collect mussels at the beach for today's breakfast. Although the shelter built by Brooke's wife is great, they joined the competition to win and get the prize money. They need a better location to build a cabin. Winning with just a tent is impossible. A sturdy cabin would also protect against the winter's cold winds and rain. The couple divides the work. Dave digs for the cabin foundation, and Brooke collects wood. This project is physically demanding. They must be mindful of their energy. Team 7. Peter. Since it often rains on Vancouver Island, temperatures are very high. Today, they plan to collect pine branches to help with fire. They make cuts in pine trees, and soon a thick sap flows out. They collect it, return to camp, and burn it. Finally, they cover it with a layer of loosened pine. This setup allows them to live without stress, even on rainy days. Day 17. 3 teams remain. Team 5, Ted and Jim. Today, the brothers plan to build a boat and head to deeper waters. They believe their previous lack of success in crabbing was due to the shallow waters near the shore. However, the boat Ted built previously is too small. Maximizing space will be their main task today. The boat is still wrapped with a rainproof cloth. They name the boat Hope. Today, they try launching it. Will this small boat withstand 2 tall men? Fortunately, the boat performs well. They are thrilled. After testing, the boat is a bit cramped but otherwise perfect. Day 2. Jim heads out to fish in deeper waters while Ted searches for food along the coast. However, luck is not on their side today. After several hours of fishing in deep waters, Jim catches nothing. Together, they weigh 410 kilograms and need a substantial amount of food daily. Without stable food sources, they could be forced to quit due to hunger. In the afternoon, the brothers set up fishing traps near the rocks where they previously fished. They tie stones at the end of the line, hooks in the middle, and bait them. Each line holds 6 to 7 hooks. These traps only need to be checked the next day. Unfortunately, Ted throws a stone too slowly and a hook pierces his index finger. They hope it doesn't get infected, as that could end their competition. Team 1. Dave and Brooke. Due to his wife's fatigue over the past few days, Dave goes fishing alone today, while Brooke rests and starts building a cabin. Brooke is lucky and catches a big fish right away, securing dinner for tonight. After Dave finishes inserting the outer wall sticks, Brooke fills the gaps between the sticks with moss. This simple action is crucial for keeping out rain and wind, preserving indoor heat, and preventing rainwater from entering. The cabin's main door and stove are directly aligned, and only the roof remains to be completed. The couple has exhausted themselves building this cabin, but they hope to move in soon. Tonight, they will move into the new home, dismantle their old shelter, and reuse all materials, including the rainproof cloth for the roof. Inside, they build 2 small beds with storage underneath. It's hard to believe they are the first to build and move into a cabin in this competition, creating a safe and cozy space. Team 7. Peter and Sam. They start their day with the usual task of fishing, but their usual spot yields no fish all morning. Peter decides to find a new fishing spot, and they cross a stream to an unexplored island. They must keep an eye on the tide while fishing there. If the water rises, they need to return immediately or risk spending the night on the island. Fortunately, the island is rich in resources, and Peter catches a fish, causing some anxiety for Sam, who has yet to catch any fish since the competition started. As time passes, Peter continues to catch fish, but Sam catches none. They give up for the day as the tide begins to rise. Day 27. Only 3 teams left. Team 5. Jim and Ted. Today, Jim plans to place the crab traps in deeper waters, as they have had no catches in the past few days. They've modified the traps and are trying again. The buoy they're using is an old fire extinguisher found on the shore. So far, the traps haven't caught any crabs, but they hope this time will bring better luck. After a night, Jim returns to the coast, eager to retrieve the traps, needing food to boost their morale. Recently, they've been surviving on seaweed, but neither brother has mentioned quitting, reflecting their family's ethos of embracing challenges and not giving up. However, they overestimated the buoyancy of the old fire extinguisher, which filled with water overnight and sank with the rope. Disheartened, Jim becomes despondent as the trap cannot be recovered. Without food, the brothers grow irritable and prone to arguing. Ted has been particularly upset. As the older brother, Jim tries to control his mood and encourage Ted not to be disheartened. Normally, Jim handles the fishing, while Ted collects shellfish and crabs from the shore. Despite their efforts, Jim has not caught any fish, while Ted, moving rocks on the shore, expends a lot of energy daily. 10 days later, Jim still catches no fish, while Ted collects food from the coast. One evening, Ted finds a large patch of mussels and calls Jim to help, but Jim thinks it's a mistake to expend their energy collecting small shellfish. Upset by his brother's dismissive attitude, Ted confronts him about the effort he alone has put into gathering their food. An argument ensues. Team 1, Brooke and Dave. Having moved into their cabin half a month ago, the structure provides them with a sense of security. To pass the rainy days, they've made a chessboard. In the wilderness, keeping busy is crucial to avoid idle thoughts. They are determined to win this competition. Today, Dave goes fishing while Brooke sleeps at home. Suddenly, she hears the sound of collapsing wood and discovers that a stick over the fireplace has caught fire. Fortunately, she was not fishing with Dave. Otherwise, they might have returned to a burnt-down cabin. After extinguishing the fire, Brooke joins Dave in fishing. They are lucky to catch 3 fish quickly, but considering the caloric needs, each person requires 2 to 3 fish per day to maintain their physical functions. They still need more food. Team 7. Peter and his son Sam today, they plan to make a ladder for safer access to their freshwater collection point, which involves climbing over a large tree stump, a slip-prone and potentially injurious task. After a month, they've become relatively stable, but their biggest concern is getting injured and being forced to leave the competition. After completing the ladder, they head to the coast to fish. Sam, having never caught a fish during the competition, is determined to break this unlucky streak. However, as he fishes, he ends up catching a crab instead. No wonder he hasn't had any luck with fishing. But at least he has a crab today. The father and son return to their shelter for dinner, dreaming of buying a fishing boat if they win and going deep-sea fishing and crabbing every day. Dreaming is pleasant. Day 40 arrives. 3 teams remain. Ted from Team 5 is as usual on the beach, moving stones in search of food. Under the stones, he finds cap shells, and if lucky, small fish. Recently, the brothers often argue, harshly hoping their words motivate each other to find more food. Both are determined not to quit the competition. As the weather turns colder, they check their fishing nets and find a rotten fish. It seems the net hasn't been checked in a while. Having not eaten proper meat in half a month, Jim still decides to take the fish back to camp. At night, they repeatedly flip the fish over the fire, hoping to kill all bacteria. They must cherish their food for the sake of victory. Unfortunately, the next day, Ted starts having stomach pains. He has always had a weak stomach, and eating too much seaweed also makes him nauseous. Now, eating the rotten fish worsens his condition. All work falls to Jim as they hope Ted recovers soon. Days pass, but Ted's stomach pain does not improve, resembling a burst gallbladder or appendicitis. Yet, he remains strong, preferring to curl up in pain at the shelter rather than give up. He tries to help by chopping wood, even though he is weak and doesn't want to leave all the work to his brother. Brooke from Team 1, due to her very low initial body weight and unstable food sources in the wilderness, is now just skin and bones. If this continues, the program might force her out due to health reasons. Today, Dave decides to make a crab trap to increase their chances of getting food. The trap isn't very big, but is sturdy. They use 2 fish heads as bait and place it in their usual fishing spot. The next morning, they go to the coast to check the trap. Pulling up the rope feels heavy, but unfortunately there are no crabs, just lots of sea snails. They are not picky eaters. Anything edible will not be wasted. Back at camp, they roast a sea snail directly on the fire. However, sea snail meat is very limited. 70% of a large sea snail consists of inedible parts like internal organs, which cannot sustain their physical needs. In the afternoon, the couple decides to go fishing since, given their current physical condition, they can't do much else. Brooke's weight has now dropped by 35%, a terrifying fact. With her small initial weight and not enough fat to endure, she could face many health issues, and in severe cases, even permanent physical decline. For his wife's safety, Dave chooses to withdraw from the competition. Only those who have endured such hardships know how difficult it is to survive in the wilderness. While he might have a higher body weight to last longer, his wife faces life-threatening risks. The couple has continuously struggled with hunger, and though they ultimately failed, they did so with honor. Brooke, a woman with a small initial weight, persisted until day 49 before exiting the competition. Both she and her husband did well. The log cabin they built will leave a lasting impression on the show. They were the first couple to be eliminated as the seventh team. Sam and his father, Peter, feeling the change in weather and seeing snow on the mountaintops, needed to cut pine branches today to lay in their shelter and cover any gaps. Peter, always taking on all the work by himself, perhaps did not want his son to suffer. While Sam was touched by his father's efforts, he was also worried about his 61-year-old father's health, who no longer was in his prime. Under starvation, excessive work could require a long recovery time, or even cause fainting due to anemia, leading to their possible withdrawal from the competition. Due to the cold weather, their fishing efforts had been fruitless for some time. Today, despite spending the afternoon at the river mouth, they caught nothing. Hunger was gradually overtaking the father and son duo. By day 50, only 2 teams remained. Jim and Ted, 2 brothers, were the members of the 5th team. Ted, having recovered from a week of stomach pain, was ready to start searching for food again. He knew his brother had sacrificed a lot during his illness and was now eager to share the workload. Luckily, they found many small fish under a large rock. Peter and Sam, the 7th team, fell into a routine of chopping wood, boiling water, cooking, fishing, and sleeping, making time pass quickly. By day 65, they had already spent Halloween, Thanksgiving, and now Christmas in the wilderness. Sam imagined if they were at home, they'd be enjoying the company of relatives, drinking hot coffee and eating cookies and cheesecake. Meanwhile, Jim and Ted recorded a Christmas greeting for their family on camera. It's a day for family reunions, yet the brothers were still in the wilderness, striving for their dream. By day 70, 2 teams remained. Ted's weight had dropped by a quarter, now weighing only about 61 kilograms. Initially, the 2 tall brothers started the competition with a combined weight of about 183 kilograms, and now they weighed around 135 kilograms together. Collecting firewood now required both of their efforts. It was hard to imagine how weak they had become. Team 7's member, Peter, had bad news today. In the morning, Peter started feeling nauseous as stomach acid constantly irritated his throat. Sam immediately got up to gather fresh water, hoping to neutralize the acid in his father's esophagus and alleviate his discomfort. This condition was due to long-term lack of food, causing the stomach acid to reflux into the esophagus, which could lead to severe damage and even esophageal cancer. Peter was in great discomfort. He wanted his son to win and tried his best to help Sam win the prize money, but his body was nearly at its limit. Peter was concerned that continuing in the competition could result in permanent health damage, which was unacceptable. Yet, he also wondered if any other team could still be enduring to this extreme. At this moment, both teams wanted to win, and it became a test of endurance. Whoever could last would win the $500,000. On day 74, a speedboat appeared on the sea, signaling that one team had chosen to withdraw. The camera focused on Peter and his son, who had decided to exit the competition as they were on the verge of dehydration and needed to conclude their participation. Although conceding was regrettable, they had given their all. Sam was unwilling to let his father take further risks, fearing that he would never forgive himself if his father suffered any illness due to the contest. After all, his father was 61 years old, and having him join the competition was already a great honor for Sam. He had learned a lot from his father, who gracefully admitted defeat due to age, unable to keep up with his younger, stronger son. The father and son had tried their hardest, enduring for 74 days. Although they did not win, the time spent together was the greatest gift for Peter. On day 75, only one team remained, the 5th team, with member Jim still moving dry wood. Today, they were informed that the crew would come for a regular medical checkup, their only comfort being the warmth from the fire they could offer. Unaware that they were the last team standing, this kind of checkup had happened many times before. As they were being interviewed, their wives quietly approached them from behind. With a greeting, their victory was announced. They had succeeded. The hardships and disputes along the way had finally paid off, solidifying their brotherly bond. Of course, the substantial prize money would help pave a smoother path for their future lives. It was hard to believe that these 2 tall brothers had lasted until the end. Congratulations to the brothers on their victory.